Good morning, everybody. I'm Ryan Gardner, and I'm your host of Re-Education of a Nation. Today's topic, why you should vote and the importance of it. It's November 4th, Voters' Eve, and I'm excited. I'm really excited because this is the time that we should be expressing how we feel and who we want to represent us. A lot of times we take the right to vote, it is a right, for granted. Now, let me explain why. For a lot of you who don't know, who missed history class or it wasn't taught, because a lot of the knowledge has been pretty much thrown to the side, African Americans, or what you want to call slaves at the time, were given the right to vote with the 15th Amendment back in 1860. Now, if you know America's timeline, 1860, that's a while ago. Not too long, but it is a while ago. However, keep in mind that this was during the Civil War. All right. So the right to vote was not really enforced until 1965. Now, ironically, almost 100 years after the end of the Civil War, which ended on 1865, were African Americans given the right to vote. So now, why is that so important? Ryan, Re-Education of a Nation, is talking about it, but why is it so important? Well, I'll tell you why it's so important. I had to adjust. It just felt wrong. What you have to understand is this. During the Civil War, you were given the right to vote, or your ancestors were given the right to vote, but they weren't allowed to vote. Think about that. Here you go. Here's a right, but you're not allowed to. And what do I mean by not allowed to? The Voters Act, or the Right to Vote Act, wasn't put in place and enforced until 1965. So you had how many wars between then? The Civil War was going on. You had African Americans or blacks fighting in that, and minorities. Then you had the Korean War. Then let's back up and say we had the Great Depression, World War I, World War II, Vietnam. But your people weren't allowed to vote. They were allowed to fight for this country. And me being myself, and me being a veteran myself, I understand that plight. So what you're saying to me is I can die for America. I can die for racial inequality, but I can't die voting. See, November 5th is important. It really is. It's in every 4 years, even whatever it is, even the presidential election, all these things are important, especially the congressional elections. Whether you want to sit there and own it or not, the president does not do anything without some type of congressional approval. These people are the ones who are the movers and shakers, the congressmen, the senators, at your state, local level as well, because they send the influence up. You need to use your right to vote. Whether you're thinking about it that way or not, a lot of African Americans, a lot of minorities, a lot of immigrants died just so you can have the right to vote. Look at the timeline again. 1860, 15th Amendment. Not enforced, but hey, we're going to give it to you. 1865, Civil War ends. America was in complete racial chaos for almost the next one. Still in racial chaos, but it was really in racial chaos in that time frame. And I'll explain why. Between 1860 to 1965, and even it still occurs today, but just is not as prevalent, there were tests that blacks or Negroes would have to take in order to vote, to prove they could vote. There were poll taxes. Of course, there was a good old KKK scaring people off, telling Negroes not to vote, people being murdered, slaughtered, all kinds of things, ballots not being counted. So you're wondering why I'm saying this is so important. Well, it's important because people have died. It is your right. And like any right, if you don't use it, you will lose it. So what I'm saying and urging all you guys, share this video, like it, love it, subscribe. Look for us on Facebook. But the point of all that is I'm doing this and asking for all that so we can get these messages out and we can start to understand what our rights are and why they're so important. Re-Education of a Nation wants you to know community is important. People are important. We are a nation divided right now. And if you start voting, you take the sting out of it for those who died just a little bit each time you vote, because they gave their all when they weren't supposed to, but they were forced to. That's the other thing. Understand that they were forced to participate in these wars. They were forced to die for something that they believed in but didn't believe in them. This is Education of a Nation. This is Ryan Gardner again. Hey, think with this, not with these. Peace.